Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chicks Talking Shift. We're so glad you're here. We have such a fun conversation ahead of us. Don't you think, Alecia?
I do. Oh my gosh. We've kind of talked about a few things here and there, and it's just going to be a beautiful landscape. It's going to be a fun journey, I think, from the past to the present to the future.
I mean, that's the shift. That's what we're going through. That's why we started these conversations. That's why this podcast exists. That's us fulfilling a calling.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. So,
Yeah.
we're looking at the shift in technology. We're looking at how it's impacted our lives. Where are we going with this? We're addressing the concerns that we're living with and the things that we've identified and the awareness that we've created in our lives to share those perspectives with you so that you can also have awareness around when the technology is benefiting you and when it's stripping you of your joy. And so we're here to raise the vibe. You got to stay in that joy. So you have to have an awareness around the technology that's impacting our lives and how it's impacting our lives, because it ain't slowing down. And we just got to pay attention to it, especially during the shift. Technology has changed our world.
Yeah, exactly like you say. It's just building the awareness around what it's doing in our lives. Technology is absolutely magical. It's amazing how it works. And so there's so much good that comes with it. But like everything living on a dualistic planet, there's also a heavier negative side too. And so that's what we want to do is travel that spectrum from, the light to the little bit more heavy to create some awareness around some things that are happening out there and in here, and figure out how do we move forward knowing what we think we know and learning a little bit and growing a little bit and evolving along the way, and bringing things into perspective of how do I like what I'm doing, how I'm doing it now, what feels good, what doesn't, doing that inner check-in that we always talk about, checking that feeling place to what feels comfortable and good and light and what feels a little bit heavier and there's a rub, maybe a little bit of resistance, not judging it, just paying attention to it. And then in those places that we have the resistance, figuring out what are a couple of things that I could do to maybe make some of those feel a little bit better, so I'm a little bit more in alignment with what I'm doing and saying and how I'm acting as I kind of move through the world and interact with people and technology and those things. Just bringing the awareness to the small changes that we can make in life that eventually lead to a really good trajectory in getting us where we say we want to be. So I was born in the 60s. I was born in 61. That seems so long ago.
Wow, you're ancient.
I am ancient, and I'm gonna be
like I have room to talk.
I'm gonna be more ancient on the November 22nd as I realized that I'm turning 60, and it hadn't even dawned on me.
Oh my
So
God.
it's so
This is a huge milestone birthday.
It is.
60 years out as a human being. Look at
60
you.
years as a
60
human
years. Wow.
Yes. I wonder what that is in angel years. You know how we have dog
There
years?
is no time.
No time. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So primarily I was born in the 60s, but really kind of conscious age in the 70s and in my 20s in the 80s. And I think back to how things used to be compared to how they are, and just started observing the differences and how technology and the internet and all of our electronic devices, how they've changed our lives. And it wigged me out all of a sudden when I realized in 2007, the iPhone came out. And I think, oh my gosh, that was only 14 years ago. Look how much things have changed. So I started thinking about how children, how much different play is with children and stuff these days, and started thinking back to the 70s and the 80s, and thought it might be fun if we revisited some of those places and how things have changed since we were kids. So, what do you remember, Angel?
Oh gosh. What pops in my mind when we start going back in time, it's watching Back to the Future. when I was a kid. I love that movie.
I did
Something
too.
about the future.
I
I was
still
always
do.
so
Yeah.
curious about it. It's like, ooh, I wonder if that's really going to happen. Well, in 1985, when that movie was out, they, the future was flying cars and all kinds of stuff that we don't have right now. And so here we are. Think about being back in 1985, and I was 18. I just graduated high school in 84. So thinking, wow, what's the world going to be like in the year 2021? I mean, really, we are so in the future compared to when we, that time of our lives that we are in the future. This is the future. And it's such a futuristic perspective. And we are living in this magical, futuristic time. But because we're in it, we don't really realize or have that perspective necessarily. I mean, you're right. You talk about the iPhone changing and technology. Every rose has its thorn, right? I love my iPhone. I just can't imagine life without it. It's like my best friend. It's always in my hand or at my side. And when I leave the house without it, I'm like, oh my God, somebody took my right arm off. You know what I mean? Just for me, it's like I don't feel as safe without it, which is a really weird thing. Have we as a society created that much fear? We have to have this little device with us at all times, to feel connected. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's what you say. I think it's a thing for all of us, right? You get 15 minutes away from home and you realize, oh my gosh, I left my phone at home. I don't like the feeling that creates. I don't like feeling dependent on things. And it feels like an umbilical cord or a pacifier. I don't think it's as much unsafe as it is disconnected, because I'm so used in the way that I use it. If I'm going to meet somebody, we're texting about it ahead of time. And I think about all the communications that I might be getting, or that I might get in a situation and not be able to communicate. I'm running late or whatever. So that umbilical cord, I don't like that at all. And what you say is exactly true. It's such a contrast to the phones that we grew up with, right? With a cord in the wall.
Yeah. The landlines.
The landlines.
Yes.
Well, I still have a landline because I live in the country. So I still have one because I don't get real good cell service out here. But pay phones. I ran in, I was on a walk the other day. I was walking around in my sister's city, and they still have, there's a few pay phones.
Wow.
I haven't seen a payphone forever. So yeah.
How much are they? Do you know? I wonder how much they are these days.
A quarter.
Oh, they're still a quarter?
A quarter.
Okay, that's good.
I don't know what that gets you.
And there's still companies that actually go and empty the pay phones, I guess.
I don't know. But I think it's at a quarter. Now you've made me curious. I was so into keeping my pace and everything. I didn't stop and look at the payphone. So next time I'm on that walk, I'm going to stop and I'm going to try to use the phone.
And you need to take a picture of it.
I think I did, actually.
We need some B-roll.
I think I have a picture of it. But yeah, so the umbilical cord, the safety, the panic that goes through you, I think that's a lot of things that a lot of us go through.
Can you imagine a time, and I'm talking to the viewers or listeners, where you didn't know who was calling you when the phone rang, had no idea who was on the other line, so you always answered it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you didn't want to miss a call from anybody. And
there weren't answering machines.
Right. And if you weren't home, you never knew if they called.
It's true. It's so true.
I mean, you just never knew what you were missing. I mean, yeah. And I'll just talk to them when I get home. But yeah, before answering machines, it's like we just didn't have a concern about missing out. It's this, I'm going to miss out.
Yes.
And that's another, we carry these phones with us. Whereas back then, that was not even part of our psyche. We were just out living life. And then when we got back and the phone rang, oh, you tried calling me? Oh, sorry, I wasn't here. I was out playing or whatever.
Right.
So that has dramatically changed not only how much, our time and energy, but how we think in the background. the subliminal thoughts when we're out. We don't have that concern anymore.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
know, now we use our phone for maps and GPS and all that stuff.
Yeah, speaking of maps, one of my friends the other day told me that I don't know if somebody told her this or she read it online or whatever, but it was a little girl talking to, I think it was her grandmother, and she was talking about the olden days, right? And so they were talking about the difference in being able to use GPS to find your way around as opposed to before there were phones. And her granddaughter said, "Well, what did you do?" She said, "We used maps, to travel and find our way." And she says, like pirate maps?
Oh my God. Pirate maps. Oh yes. Little symbols.
That's
The
like the only
gold.
map that she knows, right? Because GPS has always been in her world. It's the only map that she knows. So that shows how much things have changed, I think. Like you said, you're talking to the younger listeners. Imagine having to try to travel with a big old paper map next to you and find the roads and stuff. It totally changed things.
Yeah. I remember moving to LA in my early 20s. And the first thing everybody said, go get yourself a Thomas Brothers guide. And it
Thomas
was a
Brothers.
book. It was a book with a spiral, so I knew how to get around town.
Yeah.
And then you memorized it. And then you had a sense of where to go. And now I can't imagine
Being talked through it.
the
That's the
navigation.
difference too, and not having to change. Yeah, I use Thomas guides because I was in LA too. So yeah, that was always a thing.
Yeah.
Traveling. Remember traveling back then? How did you find where you were going to stay? Usually it's because you were driving, you found a hotel, motel,
True.
pulled in. You saw, did it have a vacancy sign or did it say no vacancy? And you went in, you found out what the price is, what the rooms are. If you had somebody that was worried about cleanliness and stuff, they'd get a key and go check the room out to see what it was. Totally different. You couldn't get it online and you couldn't look at the pictures. So there were times when you ended up driving several hours longer than you ever imagined because you never hit a motel. That's kind of crazy to think about now.
It's so true.
Technology's
So
changed
true.
travel totally.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has. Oh
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, just the taxis and now the Uber drivers, you can go anywhere from a click of your phone. Airport security. I'm sure you remember going through the airport, not having to go through security. You can have people walk you up to the gate and kiss you goodbye right at the gate.
As
Or
you walked
greet
off
you.
onto,
Yeah.
yes,
And when you get
as
off the plane, there people were right there at the gate waiting for you. And there was no security. It was just so different.
it used to be really fun to fly.
Yes,
You
it
got
was.
dressed up, it was an
Yeah.
occasion. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
now water bottles and taking all your stuff out. And yeah, it's totally changed. And I hate it that young people don't have that experience that we had because it made travel a lot more fun,
Yeah.
you know? And another thing that was different was back in the day when you were a kid, you played outside until the street lights came on. I think most of us had that was kind of a rule. When the street lights come on, you come in. And so all day long you were gone, you were out playing. And I hear people give kids these generations just down the road all the time of they're always in the house. They never go out and play. We didn't when I that's how ancient I am. We didn't have air conditioning. You went outside because it was hot in the house. And you were out of the eye shot and the earshot of parents.
Oh,
So
yeah.
kids were out riding their bikes. You didn't have phones. They didn't have cell phones that had trackers. People didn't know where their kids were most of the day, and it wasn't a problem. But now a lot of our kids aren't allowed to go out and play but we think that somebody's going to get them. And yeah, there's circumstances where somebody gets them. But yet at the same time, and we wonder why these generations have anxiety the way they do. Cell phones, we talked about umbilical cords already. And, being tracked and having somebody monitor them all the time. I would think that's anxiety producing.
I totally could relate to what you were saying. My mom being Italian, we had no problem hearing her going, "Hey, Joe." I mean, if I could hear either call me or one of my brothers, and that was it. It's like, oh, yep, that's my mom. Gotta go. And there was no hesitation either. You got on your bike and you went straight home. Michelle Robach made a comment on her Facebook about no parents, and she's got some younger ones, unlike us. Through their generation, there was some fear around letting your kids just go out and play and roam around. go to the park or do whatever if they weren't in the front yard where you can watch them. It is a whole different world. In fact, I remember Nick did this research paper in college for a marketing class. And he's like, Mom, he called me from college. He's like, I have to interview you, somebody who grew up in the 70s. I'm like, okay. He goes, let me ask you a couple of questions. I said, okay. He said, if you wanted to find a job in another city, how did you do it? I'm like, oh my gosh, you had to subscribe to the newspaper in that city, wait a week for it to arrive at your front door, and then look at the want ads section, which was a huge, very thick part of the newspaper, and look at the jobs. And it was, categorized by position. And then you'd have to send your resume or call, or, fax wasn't invented yet. So you had to put it in the mail, wait for them to get it, and then call you. Then you'd have to drive for the interview to have a face-to-face. I mean, it was a process to try to get a job in another city. I mean, it was just a fascinating. He's like, wow. I'm like, yeah, now you kids could work anywhere in the globe with a click. It's such a transient world for this generation.
Yeah. The magic.
Yeah. The magic.
The magic.
Yes,
or
absolutely.
if the difference as well is looking for a job, even if it was in your city or locally. Back then, you just walked into businesses and you talked to people.
Yes.
You'd ask for the manager, or you'd say, are you hiring anyone? And you'd introduce yourself and you'd talk to them. You'd see them face to face. They'd already have a feel for who you were. But my daughter, when she was in high school, it's all online. And they're like, they don't even want to talk to you. They're like, go online, put your application there. And so it's all based upon what you look like on the screen. I would assume algorithms searching through the resumes and all of that. And there's no chance to stand in front of somebody and let them see the sparkle in your eye and the passion when you talk about what you would be doing with them and why it's so important to you. You miss out on so much. Technology has put a kind of a wall up and a bunch of veils between the person that's looking for the job and the person that's hiring, and it's a colder process that takes some of the humanity out of the exchange.
And companies are aware that this is an issue, that they're missing out on good talent. When you survey some of these corporations, the high performing organizations, and that's why a lot of companies now are taking out the college degree restriction, because they feel like they're missing out on some talent. Because some people have all this experience, but if you click, no, I did not get a college degree, they realize, wow, we're really missing on some experienced, seasoned people.
True.
That's refreshing to see that that's taking place. So speaking of technology, I have to say, I am tracking Brad. He's running the New York City Marathon, because we're recording this on Sunday. And
your boyfriend, Brad.
Is that what I said?
No, you just said Brad. Did you want to say boyfriend or not say boyfriend? Just because they don't know who Brad is. You said I'm Brad.
I guess I have a boyfriend. I feel funny. I'm too old to have a boyfriend. It's like, oh, my boyfriend. It just feels funny to say.
Okay, how do we qualify him then? Because he should be qualified. What do you call him to make them, to bring them to your side in the manner that they are without using that?
We talked about that. I said, you refer to me as your girlfriend? He's like, I refer to you as my gal.
Oh, so my guy Brad, or my guy.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I like that. That's better than boyfriend. Seems so immature.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I see that.
So my guy Brad is running the New York City Marathon today, and I've been tracking him thanks to this amazing app and technology. I think that is so cool. I'm obviously not in New York, but I want to be at the finish line when he shows up. So I may be interrupted during this broadcast to congratulate my guy, because that's pretty incredible. This is his 11th marathon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 62 years old. It's really impressive. He's inspired me quite a bit. So
that's very
anyway, I just thought, speaking of technology, I mean, you know what? your boyfriend, spouse, whomever goes to run a marathon, you might have to wait hours and hours and hours until they call so you can ask, how did it go?
Yeah.
Now I know up to the second how it's going. I see when he's slowing down, speeding up. He's in
That's
Central Park right now.
absolute,
Yeah.
that's absolute magic. How fun. It's like it's you're well, you're tethered, right? You're with him, but although you're not with him. And of course, you'll have to take that call when he calls, because I know that you're going to be the first person that he calls. Yeah.
So anyway, had to share that. That's the
That is
magic.
magic. That is
Yeah.
magic.
Speaking of magic, I mean, we were talking about dating back then versus dating now. It's all digital. It's all digital now. I mean, you actually met people, talked to people, went up to people and handed your number on a piece of paper or a napkin.
Strangers.
Yeah.
Strangers.
Yes.
They didn't have a digital profile that you could look at. I
No.
mean, there wasn't no swiping left, swiping right. You just had a conversation with them, got kind of a vibe, exchanged phone numbers, talked on the phone a little bit before you decided whether you were going to actually go out and have a date or not. It's completely different now. I mean, I know young people that think that's really weird that you would just meet someone and decide to go on a date with them.
Right.
That's
Not
how
knowing
much things have
anything.
changed.
Yes.
You know, a lot of young people these days, they don't listen to music. You know, we used to have parties and everybody used to listen to music. Well, of course, some of them still do. But now we've got we've got the earbuds, the personal listening devices. We get to listen to exactly what we want. So sometimes we missed out on those shared music experiences that we had, I think, maybe a little bit more of back then.
Oh my God. Absolutely. I mean, that's what we did for a pastime. Let's go play records. And we just play records and listen to music. And that was the pastime. But you're right. You're right. And so many of us are tuning the world out. We're going in and we've got those headphones on too. So magical that we've got access to all these songs and all this music from any generation, any era. You just, as a click on the button. There were songs that I remember after high school going, oh, I wish I could hear that song. And I had no way of finding it. And now you just search a word in the era or the genre, or, I mean, and it's right there. So we're never without it. Music that's huge. That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's a real big one.
Yeah.
Well, and streaming. So we stream our music now. We stream our movies now. It's always been weird to me to think that for most of my life, when I bought music or a movie, I got a product. And now I just pay my money and I get ones and zeros. It's digital. It's invisible. It's different. It's different. There's something about the security of having something that you actually bought that's different than this invisible stuff that we're transferring back and forth. So that's kind of a weird one.
That's a really, really good one.
Yeah.
And I think much of our conversation today is creating the awareness around the time and energy that we devote to technology today that we didn't back in the day. Yeah. And we put a post out there on Facebook, and I thought it was really interesting. Some of the references that people made, like Fran Anderson, and she remembered the television. I thought what she brought up was really funny. She's like, remember we had to get up and change the channel on the television?
Or the remote control.
We were the remote control.
Yeah, that's so funny. On that post where we talked about the technology, Rhoda Joy, she was talking about there weren't any video games back then. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about playing outside. And just, I think there's a lot more freedom that the children had back then than they do now, especially when you look at being untethered and not having a tracker. There's a lot of kids that I'm sure would be freaked out to find out that we didn't have trackers on us when we were young. It's kind of a weird feeling. To think that somebody can see everything that you're doing. Yeah. So that was fun to put that post out and see what people had to say. Hey, if you're listening and you'd like to join in on the conversation, come to Chicks Talking Shit Facebook page and leave a little comment on our post about technology. Reminisce with us a little bit about kind of the changes of how things were back then as opposed to how they are now. And, you know, if you do, then we'll likely mention you in a future podcast. While you're there, follow the page. And if you listen to our podcast, then go to Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite platform is and give us a follow and leave us a review. And that's another thing, is that we'll read your review on one of our podcasts. So it's kind of your way of being able to participate with us and us to have a little exchange back and forth. So that makes it a little bit more fun.
Great mention.
Yeah. So running through all of that, when I think about it in a clump like that, it really starts to become obvious of how much things have shifted and what's actually shifting, how technology is shifting our lifestyles. It's fascinating to me. It's kind of like the slow and the fast lane, right? It feels so slow back then when I feel it compared to how it is now. Like I said, only in 2007 was the iPhone out. That was only 14 years ago. For young people, that'll seem like a long time. But for, you know, people over the age of 35 or 45, it's not going to be all that long ago. And so when you think about all the changes, we've had to adapt to all those changes along the way. We've seen the technology come up. So it's changed us. The kids that are born today, they're just born into it. There's a bit more of a fluidity with it than the ones that can remember before the technology, before the electronics. And I think that there's a certain amount of it that we got the magic side that's so fun and really connects us and lets you watch Brad actively while he's running that marathon. But then we've got the other things about it that a lot of it's taking a lot of time. And we're having to assimilate really, really quickly to stay up with all the rapid changes that are coming up right underneath us. And there's a lot of it. We have a certain amount of control. We can make choices of what we want and what we don't want. But there's also a bit of it that's actually forced upon us, because if you want to be in, you got to do that thing. I feel an inner rub between loving the advances that we're having and being able to step more into this magic and this interconnectedness, but at the same time realizing that there's a lot of time and energy engaging with it and managing it, especially while now we're starting to finally see what it's starting to do to us as humans. What, like social media, that's a big thing right now, what the effect that social media is having on us from a positive perspective, from a neutral perspective, and even from a negative perspective, as we bear witness to the us versus them and the divisions that we're having. So I feel a little bit of a rub inside of needing to and wanting to keep moving forward with it. But yet I'm finding also that a few resentments are building up along the way, not about the technology itself, but how it's being used.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, because you are an energy sensitive person, and a time sensitive person, which you put a lot of value on that stuff. Yeah. And when it's being stripped from us, robbed from us, when we're having technical difficulties, why isn't our computer working? I mean, 2 hours of your day is shot trying to troubleshoot, or longer. And that is the most frustrating thing for me when it comes to technology. I'm totally with you on that. Although I love technology, I love the advancement. I love living in the future. I love this.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, but for me, I'm feeling also a invasion of privacy, a tampering with that doesn't feel good. That is also tapping into my vibe. Like Alexa. I don't know if you use Alexa in your house, but where I am, I've got Alexa, and I constantly feel like I'm being listened to. It's crazy. Maybe I'm getting paranoid in my older years. But I feel like the technology is always there, and we just can't get away from it. We're like this last generation that knows the difference.
The difference.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a valuable thing to know. No, I don't have Alexa in my house, but I have an iPhone. And so Siri, I can say, hey, Siri, and she's going to pop on. And lately she says, huh? When did that change? Okay. Huh? She's getting a little bit more casual now.
Yeah, right.
But she has to listen to know when to respond to me. It's the same with Alexa. And so that's one of the things that I ran into recently. Was I ran into an article that there was a woman that had found out that you could request the audio files from all the Alexa recordings. And so she requested those files. She said she was shocked. There were thousands. She said, I never expected it. Everything we talked about was there. Now you can delete them.
Yeah.
But she didn't like that at all. And so when I heard that, you talking about Alexa not having one, it does creep me out, because there's always something listening. Even the televisions, I've gotten a new television lately. It was magic setting it up. There were so many steps. You know, it used to be, you needed a television, you went to the store, you bought a TV, you brought it home, you plugged it in, and you watched it. Now, you got to know what you're shopping for first, because they've got so many different bells and whistles that you don't even know about. And it's all new technology. So you got to, if you're going to do your due diligence, you're going to figure out what it is before you go spending $1,000 or $2,000 on something. And then when you get it home, it wants to make everything interconnected. My phone and my television and my voice and my Google account and this and that and the other thing. It's absolute magic. But I'm also a chick. I've always had a big brother thing. So I'm torn. Two wolves fight inside of me of, oh, I really want to lean into the magic. I really want my life to be part of that. To come here now and to live in these days of such magic and deny yourself feels a little bit weird. I kind of don't want to do that. But at the same time, the more I offer up, the more that's there in a database somewhere. And now I think it was the movie, The Minority Report. Wasn't that the movie where they could convict you of a crime that you were thinking about doing before you ever did it? I think so. That's how we live now. They just save everything, all the emails, all the texts, all the Google searches, all the, which may never get used for anything. But should something weird come up in your life and they need to figure out what they think they need to figure out about you, all of a sudden your emails aren't private, your texts aren't private, your purchases aren't private, the conversations that you've had in your home or outside of your home aren't private. And so when I think that if there are people with nefarious purposes and agendas, all of a sudden they've got access to everything. You can build whatever story about me that you want. To me, that's a scary thing. And so I get caught between this push me, pull you, want to lean into the magic and enjoy it, and lean back because in the back of my head, I know stuff's been stored. So that was a big epiphany I had. I've been talking about technology with a sweeping broad brush. Okay, is that really what you mean? Something doesn't feel right. And then all of a sudden I realized, no, it's not the technology. The technology is magic. What I don't like is how the corporations are collecting and using the technology and potentially manipulating me through algorithms. I got a huge problem with that. If we could get a little bit more balance there, because the technology came and we jumped on, and then they put all these user agreements and everything else that nobody ever reads because they're too long and you can't understand them. I'd like to see us pull in those corporations and what they're allowed to do a little bit more. But how do you do that when politicians are in bed with corporations? Because the corporations fund their campaigns. So when they're the ones that are making the decisions and they're the ones that are being bought off, can you get the lawmakers, the ones that are supposed to be civil servants serving our highest? How do we get them to do that when they're the ones?
Yeah, it should go both ways. If they can look at ours, we should be able to look at theirs. I know you shared that 60 Minutes clip with me, that interview with that scientist.
Yeah, it was Yuval Harari, which he's a historian and I think a bit of a futurist.
Yeah, and he pointed out the 3 rules that really we need to start implementing. And one of them was, if my data is going to be used to help me, not manipulate me.
Yes.
Use it to build a better healthcare system or, something, but they're using it to manipulate and drive their agenda or the narrative or the economy or whatever.
Making money off of your data. That's the
That's
thing.
right.
If it's your data
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
want to make money off of my data, purchase that data from me. Let me tell you it's okay for you to use that. And then you
Yeah.
pay me some money for what's being generated off of me. That's the difference.
Great point.
Yes.
Yeah, great point. It is our data. And rule number 2, he said, if you're going to increase surveillance of individuals, it should also be included in big businesses, corporations, and at the top, the governments. Why do we not have access to all that surveillance? Why is that okay to be behind the scenes and behind the curtain? Like
Yeah.
Oz, we don't know what's going on, but you can see all of us anytime, anywhere. There's something terribly wrong with the technology in that circumstance. It is, it's not going both ways. So we, the people, have
Yeah.
no power, and we're supposed to have the power. It's supposed to be up to us.
Well, look at what they do though, Angel. We were just talking about applying for a job. When you apply for a job, a lot of jobs come with drug screenings. Some of them require you to take a kind of a psychological test. You've got to show your resume. There's a variety of different things that you need to show, but yet the corporations and the government can enforce things like that on us, but yet we're not doing anything. Look, in 2021, we should have learned through all the different candidates that we've had and all the different presidents. Look, if they can drug test us for a job, of all things, if you are making decisions for hundreds of millions of people, you probably want to be sober minded. If it's important for somebody that works at McDonald's to be able to pass a drug test, how much more should it be for a politician that's sitting and making decisions for hundreds of millions of people? You should have to have a psychological test. Let's make sure that you are psychologically sound and balanced before you move into that kind of position. If you're running for president, you should also show your taxes. So what is it? Drug test, psychological test, taxes, and there was another one you and I talked about the other day. I don't remember what it was.
Well, your emotional intelligence, I think, your mental health, you're
Yeah.
dealing with other world leaders representing us.
Well, I'll tell you what, the EQ part, I hadn't thought about that. I thought about from a psychologically balanced perspective, but you're exactly right. You have to engage with people from all backgrounds and all cultures. That should absolutely be something that's included because we want the most balanced amongst us to be up there making decisions on our behalf.
Transparency. Rule number 3, he mentioned, never allow the data to be just in one place. For example, Netflix knows exactly what we like to watch, tells us what to watch. Amazon tells us what to buy. It knows. It
Yeah.
knows our patterns. It knows us better than ourselves. This doctor is saying that these algorithms are leading to us becoming hacked humans. And
Yeah.
when I said that term, I went, wow, we are being hacked. Our
Yeah.
information, who we are. I talk about my Garmin watch that I love. It was a gift and it's tracking my heartbeat, my running activities. I can see where my health is improving. My health and fitness is being impacted because I have this little accountability buddy on my wrist now.
Mhm.
And so, but Garmin has all kinds of information about my body. I don't even know. There's data there that's being stored in some place
Yeah.
that we are not even aware of. And so I thought that clip was really fascinating and timely based on the conversation that we said we were going to have. But I mean, you think about the technology and surveillance and cameras on every street corner. I don't remember being asked, as we the people, is it okay if we do this? I guess the Homeland Security thing, we did give permission after 9/11 somehow. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but that's when it all
I didn't
began.
vote on it.
No, I don't remember doing that. And like drones becoming a whole new thing. I have so enjoyed seeing perspectives of planet Earth I would have never been able to see without a drone perspective. I'm fascinated by it. And that's the beauty, the magic of technology. And then I was out on a boat near the Gulf of Mexico watching fireworks on the 4th of July. And here were all these drones flying around, thinking there's absolutely no privacy. I don't know who's controlling the drones. I don't know if they're picking up conversations we're having. The beautiful private moment on the lake was just kind of stripped, knowing that we were being watched. And not that we were doing anything. Sorry, don't go there. I know what you were thinking. It wasn't like that.
All right. Coming soon to a screen near you. We'll know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. What are the drones doing with that information? Anyway, there's just absolutely no privacy in our world anymore. That's just something to become aware of. Become aware of it, but don't become paranoid of it. And that's where I'm trying to find this balance.
Great point about the drones. It's from that bird's eye view, right? That alters us as well. Now, just regular people are getting all kinds of different perspectives. It's almost like making us holographic in a way, pulling us up, having us hover from a higher perspective. That's an interesting thought. Yeah. Lots to be aware of. And so one of the things that I realize is that the technology has changed our self-sufficiency. You used to be able to, if something went bad in your car, you were able to fix it. You know, right now there's a shortage of automobiles for a variety of different reasons. And one of the reasons is because of the lack of microchips. And so our cars are so driven by technology that a whole lot of it's just computerized. It's not something you can fix as a person. So I've been thinking lately, your car breaks down, you take it to the shop, they say, well, it needs this, but we can't get that in stock. And so all of a sudden somebody has a car that might not be working for months. What do you do under those circumstances? And so I was talking to my dad about this. He says, yeah, he says, I used to be able just to go out and he says, I could fix the car and go to a junkyard and get one of the parts if I couldn't get a new one. And so it's taken some of our self-sufficiency away. It's really fascinating. And if your cell phone breaks, you can't fix your cell phone.
And this sticks in my mind. And I remember when I had that opportunity to interview Mark Cuban on the radio show years ago. He said, if we don't take the time to learn technology, we will get left behind. But as an entrepreneur working at home, I don't have an IT department to learn from next to me. You know, it's like, I have to really go out of my way to learn the technology. It is really important because it is advancing so quickly. It's overwhelming to keep up with it all, at least for someone of my generation. But I see, you know, my son's generation, you know, this is their world. I think the younger generation can adapt easier, learn quicker. For me, it's a chore. To go and learn technology. But you're absolutely right.
You were just talking about the evolution. And so what drives that evolution? Why do we have to keep changing so quickly? Part of it is that companies are always inventing new things so that they can get in front of you with the one that's created the latest new thing, so they can be there first, so that you will buy that product. And so what's driving the evolution is the competition. We've got corporations that are driving humanity and pushing the technology and the evolution that, like you say, just like the cameras that we didn't necessarily vote for, but yet we're held hostage by it. So we're forced to adapt to them competing for money. How is this affecting us? How's this changing us? And just because they can, should they? We're being drug along, sometimes to our detriment, because when something goes wrong on my computer, well, how many hours do I spend just because it's me trying to figure out what it is? Then I can't get that. Then I call a tech. I have to go through a phone tree that doesn't have any of the options that I'm looking for. And so I get stuck in that thing trying to get to somebody. And then you're stuck on hold. And some companies don't even give you the option of, hey, we realize your time is valuable. So why don't you leave your number and we'll call you when we get to your point in the queue. But instead they make you listen to, you know, some ridiculous recording every 30 seconds for the next 3 hours. These things, we're being robbed of our time because of some of the things that aren't working with the technology, because we're not tech people. We're people that just need our shit to work so that we can get our email and our text and everything else. And when it's not working, we've got to rely on somebody else to take care of it. I've talked to my husband. Oh, I mentioned we got iPhones. And so one of the things we talked about is we should have something called forever phones and forever computers, to where the technology might be changing in the background, but the user interface always stays the same. So regardless of the changes that happen, whatever you choose to have on your phone, if you need big numbers, if you need big text, if you just want Facebook and Google and a couple of other things, that always stays the same, because they're always changing things up to make it really cool. But there's certain people, especially the older you get, that have difficulty keeping up with the screens change. I did an update. Oh my gosh, where'd my thing go that I was always using? I've used it for years. Now I can't even find it. They've changed it. They've made an update, and now it doesn't even look the same. How much time and energy do we spend trying to keep up with the new changes that are going on? If you had something like a forever phone, yeah, the technology upgrades and updates in the background, but it's just a simple thing that you know from now on, it's going to stay exactly the same, so that you can count on being able to use it from now on, instead of having to learn that new thing. Some people get to the stage in their life where they don't need the new thing.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to do what they need to do.
I have to interrupt this broadcast. All right, we're at the finish line. I see him. Way to go, Fred. You did it. Woo-hoo.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, how fun is that?
That's so cool.
That was really fun.
Oh, he finished. He did great.
Awesome.
And so as we start to wrap up this conversation, let's recap some of the things to become aware of, to pay attention to. We talked about the time vampire that technology can be. Pay attention to that. How is it stripping you of your valuable, precious time, that commodity of time? We can't get that back. Time is something we can never get back. And I know we've talked about it. It's happening every day. You and I have talked about it on previous podcasts. The divisiveness, pay attention to that, because that can strip our energy and cause us stress, and use our positive vibe, and it could lower the vibration. When people who like us, who feel the separation and are hurt by that, it breaks my heart to see it. We can't agree to disagree anymore. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm going over here with these people now, so you're not one of us. You're kicked out of the tribe, right?
Yeah.
So that divisiveness, pay attention to how technology is doing that. And we have the power not to allow that to happen. What are some other things that you're noticing is stuff to pay attention to?
Well, part of it, you talk about the us versus them, the tribal culture that we're in, and social media, as we know, is a big piece of that. Tristan Harris, who did the documentary, The Social Dilemma, he has an organization that's really trying to make a difference. He sees what's going on. And so I think he feels a really strong motivation to try to help combat some of the negative things that it's weaving into our culture, as well as recognizing the things that are positive. And so on social media, he talks about on his website called the Center for Humane Technology, he has a thing called Make Facebook #1ClickSafer. And one of the things that he talks about is that if Facebook would do nothing else but change the reshare button, they have shown that it is a solution to neutralizing some of this us versus them. And so he calls it frictionless sharing is dangerous. And so I think frictionless sharing means just being able to share willy-nilly whatever you want. And so what it is that we get a lot of these things trigger us emotionally, potentially in a negative way, or even in a positive way. It happens with positive things too. And so what do? Immediately when we do that, we click share, and then we share that thing. Well, some of the things that we're sharing aren't true. Some of them are a little bit mean and spiteful and divisive. What they're saying is that maybe we need to put the brakes on that a little bit more. He says that part of really making that easier is to have to stop at 2 hops, is what they say. So 2 shares, And then after that, if you want to share it again, you've got to go out and you've got to get the link, and you've got to bring the link back and share the link instead of just pushing one button. So that's one way, because think about how much more time that is. But that's enough seconds to interrupt that emotional thing and, cause that constant sharing that goes on, especially of the things that are dividing us. And the other thing is that they've talked about is that there's a lot of people that share content that never click over to the article. You'll see a headline. Those headlines are meant to get our attention and trigger us. And so we think we know what's going on based upon the headline, never click over, and that you should not be able to share unless you've at least clicked over to the link. That's another thing that can definitely make a difference. So on Tristan Harris's website, Center for Humane Technology, look up hashtag One Click Safer, and you can go and you can sign a petition to petition Facebook to say, hey, this is something, you can make it happen now. You can make it happen immediately. That will make an immediate difference on trying to cut down some of this us versus them. So that's one of the things that I noticed, as well as on that website, he's got all kinds of different tools and stuff that you can use to have the technology not trigger your attention as much. Like one of the things that he talked about is the fact that all of our apps and everything on our phone, they're very colorful. And a lot of times, if you've got a notification, what pops up? A red button with a number in it. You see that red, it's a trigger. You got to get to that immediately, whether it's true or whether it's not. It's just a psychological pull. And so he says there are ways that you can make your phone, you can take all the color out of your phone and just make it grayscale to where you're not triggered emotionally by the colors and stuff that come up. Though
I take the notifications off. I
do
turn all
too.
mine off.
I do too.
What a difference that has made in my life.
Yeah.
Because that will take you immediately right out of the present moment.
Yeah. And I think
Whatever
that's
it is. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's in one of the toolkits of the different solutions about how to bring technology in alignment with what your value system and your needs are. And so it's doing things like that, stopping your notifications, really making conscious efforts to do small and some large things so that the technology isn't driving you and you're driving it. So yeah, that's so along the lines of what you were talking about, the divisiveness. But one of the other things I know they talk about is addictive behaviors.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with Nick when he was a young boy around video game addiction. He came home from school and he's like, Mom, I'm going to go take my break before I do homework. I'm like, that's fine. And so I said, but before you do that, would you come over here? I have something on the kitchen table I'd like you to look at. And I printed out an article and it just bullet pointed the symptoms of video game addiction. And when he looked at that and he read it, he started crying. He's like, Mom, I don't want to be addicted to anything. And I have almost all of these where he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't go out and play with his friends sometimes because he was on the video game. There were certain indicators of an addiction that when you start avoiding people and that human connection because of technology, I mean, that's stuff to pay attention to.
It's so true. I was reading a piece in Psychology Today that there was a woman, she's been a psychologist for like 30 years. And she said she is getting in so many young men that are deeply, deeply depressed and have a lot of anxiety. And she said 20 years ago, she would have told him to, take this medication and blah, blah, blah. She says, I've realized what it is. She said, for a lot of them, it's the video gaming, it's the addiction to the screens. And she said, and so what I know is that they really need to remove themselves from the screens. And I can't imagine that most people can do this, but she tells them no screens for 30 days because she wants to reset the dopamine and stuff in the body. And not have those constant payoffs that you get through video gaming and, having people like your posts and, all that kind of thing. And she said a lot of young people can't do it, but when they are successful, it makes a huge difference in their life, not to have that constant engagement like that. It's kind of a sign of the times. I kind of equate it with dieting. So I quit using the word diet years and years and years ago. It's just not a thing for me. But when people think of diets, often they think of having to deprive themselves of something, which that's a bad enough setup to begin with. But on top of that, food, unlike most other things, you have to eat. So you're constantly having to make food choices. It's difficult to make really good food choices when you're having to engage with food. If you go all or nothing, it might be a little bit easier, but you've got to manage your choices. It's the same thing with technology. It's like a digital addiction.
Mhm.
And so, how are you supposed to pull yourself away from the magnetism of the technology when you have to engage with it for almost everything? You need a phone to make a phone call, you need to text, you need your email. There's just a lot of things that you need to engage technology with. So, just like food, it's not an all or nothing thing. And
No,
so,
it's not.
you've got to find that in between place. That's rough.
It is. And even if I like, and I'm going back to my son because I know he has an awareness around video addiction, video game addiction. He has an awareness around it.
Yes.
He has a little inner barometer when he says, I'm playing too much, that it's time to go out and go for a hike. And he lives in the mountains. So he goes for a hike. But then I'm thinking, he's sending me pictures from the hike and
Oh,
video from
yeah.
the hike. So
Yes.
we're still using the technology, even
Yeah.
while we left one behind. But how
Yeah.
great is that to have a little camera with you at all times? I always had a camera with me and had to go and get the film developed and wait, 3 days to get those pictures back
True.
and
Oh my
always get
gosh.
doubles, right?
Photo mat.
Yeah.
Photo mat. You drove through photo mat and you got the physical pictures.
Yes, exactly.
So funny.
I know. Well, my aunt still prints out pictures and gives us pictures, which I love. I'm like, oh my God, I'm holding a picture. It's been so long since I've held a photograph. The point is, even to incentivize ourselves when we break free from technology, to have some kind of reward system for ourselves when we can break free, just to reprogramming ourselves just a little bit, do that self monitoring,
Yeah.
that self observation, and take the change into your own hands. Take our power back. Use technology. It's magical. It's an amazing thing, amazing world we're a part of right now. Be aware of the positive impact it has on your life, but more importantly, be aware of the negative impact it has on your life and how it impacts your relationships and those people around you as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, because one of the things that's affected more than anything is our time, right?
yeah.
And so I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you. I don't know about everybody else, but I can probably surmise most of us have a sense that we don't have enough time, that there's never enough time.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that's taking up that time is the technology, in the combination of the fun things that we do online that give us information and connection, as well as the things that take time when we're trying to figure out what's broken about the technology and what's not working. I find that I often beat myself up because I don't get my to-do list completed and I'm not spending time with the people that I love, and I'm not making those important phone calls that I think, oh my gosh, I need to call her. And I find that I beat myself up for that sometimes. And part of the reason is because a lot of these little interrupting things, like right now, for some reason, when I go to write an email, my font is like a size 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I've changed it to make it bigger, but it doesn't make it bigger on my screen, and it gets giant when other people receive it. I'm like, what happened all of a sudden to change that? So now I got to go figure out what that is. And so when I look back through my day, I figured out, well, I was on hold with the AT&T for 45 minutes. And oh yeah, you had to figure out that software glitch. And oh, what was that password that I couldn't get changed?
God, don't even
You
talk to me
talk
about passwords.
Oh my gosh, passwords.
Oh, remember our life before passwords? I mean, all you had to do was remember the lock on your bicycle lock. That was it. That's the
And we
only
thought that
and
was
your phone
hard.
number.
And your
we
phone number.
Yeah, yeah, or your best friend's phone number. I
Yeah.
remember phone numbers, but geez. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, you mentioned
No.
passwords and it triggered me. I'm like,
The
no.
word of the day. Ding, 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 ding. Hey, passwords.
And the password is
Yes.
passwords.
Yes, that's an old one right there.
Oh gosh.
People
Well,
might
you're
not know.
talking to somebody who's on the dating game, for crying out loud.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. You did go on the dating game, didn't you?
Oh yes. That's
Oh my
another
gosh.
story
That
for
was
another
back
day.
before swiping left and right, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, they still do, I guess. The Bachelorette and the Bachelor. It's a little bit different world.
Yes.
So we say that, we never have enough time, and we realize that we've got micro times and then chunks of times that are being taken, but just from the interaction in technology. And so, that was our purpose, right? Is just to get ourselves, because we've been questioning this in our life, and encourage other people to pay attention. Just be aware. Don't judge it. Don't judge it, positive or negative, but just try to create some awareness around how you're using your technology and maybe where some of your time is going, so that you can, once you're aware of that, then you can set a little goal for a baby step to do. What can you do to alter that behavior and bring it in a little bit more alignment with how you say you want to live? Hopefully that's going to be a big takeaway for people, is just really creating that awareness about how they're engaging with their technology, and also paying attention to, like, one of the things you and I talked about is the fact that I'm on my computer a lot. And in
Yeah.
the afternoon, I'm on the computer a lot with you, doing the podcast and a variety of different things. And so one of the things that I realized is that when my husband comes home, generally he comes home and I'm on the computer. So my laptop's open. I had a realization one day that he can walk in, I can greet him. Hi, how are you? How was your day? But with my laptop screen open, it's like that screen is between he and I. And it made me realize that maybe it would be better to shut the computer screen when he came home, still look him in the eye and say, hi, how was your day? But it felt different because there was no screen between us.
You took away the
Baby,
barrier.
I took away the barrier, which creates connection. Baby step. That takes 1 second. Awareness, a little thing that you can do to make your relationships a little bit better and to create better in real life relationships, as much as we try to with some of our digital relationships.
Set the technology aside. Let's put some more focus on our face-to-face human connections. I think just doing that one thing, make a human connection, make a phone call, talk to a stranger. We can raise the vibe that way. I think we're all craving some human connection in a very, very technology driven world that we're in. We cannot lose the humanity in the technology. That's really important.
That's exactly right.
It helps.
So we'd like to know if you've had any realizations for yourself, or you have any as you move forward. How are you managing reclaiming your time with technology? If you'll shoot us a message at chickstalkingshift@gmail.com, or make a comment on Chicks Talking Shift Facebook page, we'd like to hear from you and hear what are some things that you've been successful with. And then maybe we can share a little bit about that with people in the future when we touch back with things related to this particular podcast.
Yeah, thank you for that. Again, we thank you for joining the conversation. And Alecia, as always, I always like going just a little deeper with you and just talking about the state of the world and how we can make it a little bit better. I think we do that just by talking about it.
Yeah, and making ourselves a little bit better as we move forward, because it's all about navigating this shift, and we're all in it together. So
Yes, we are.
hold hands and let's go.
Jump in the ship together. Yeah. Trust we got our wings. They're going to work. Let's fly. Soar high, everybody. And power up. And no pun intended on that.
Double
Take
entendre. Take care. Bye.
Take care. We love everyone.
Yes, we do. We love everybody.
But most important, you gotta love yourself.
You gotta love yourself. Yeah. Still working on it. It's a long journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what kind of message are we sending if we don't love ourselves?
Yeah.
We're saying that we don't love this creation. Are you fucking kidding me?
I think this is a damn cool creation right here, if I do say so myself. Now, every once in a while, she kind of gets down in the trenches and forgets who she is. But for the most part, she's a pretty cool chick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't want to insult the artist.
Yeah.
They're not loving it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You're the artist and the creation.
Yes, that's exactly.
You're co-creating. Wow, that's deep.
Yes, it is. And that's what we're here for. Deep shift. We're getting that deep shift. Don't stop now, girlfriend. Keep
Right.
going.
We're the paddle, baby. You're up Schiff's Creek. It's hard to paddle.
Maybe the rudder. Isn't it the rudder that kind of guides it where it goes?
You're the motor. Okay. It's the motorboat.
Back with these wooden parts.
Right. This is technology. We're talking technology.
There you go. That's a perfect segue right there.